Hello, welcome guys. We'll get started soon when more people join. Hello. Hi, everyone who just joined. Hello, welcome. Hi, David. This is so different from an in-person workshop. Wow. Hello. We'll get started in a few minutes. Hi. Hello. Yeah, we'll be getting started soon. Has anyone done 3D illustration before? Well, that's perfect. I'm not sure if you send something before people join, do people see it? Dorothy, maybe post it like 2 minutes after 7 then. All right, I'll just give maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. Wow, looks like some of you have done 3D before, so that's exciting. I also made the donut tutorial. Yeah, apparently, so Blender Guru is the guy who did the donut tutorial, but apparently he's pretty problematic. If you look at his Twitter, it's kind of racist, so didn't include his tutorial in the slides. But what we'll be making today is super basic. So hello everybody. Looks like people are joining. A couple more seconds and then we can get started. All right, okay, so let's get going. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending our workshop today. Hopefully you already have Blender installed on your computer. Don't worry about opening it now, but we will be using it in a couple minutes. And the slides for this workshop, Dorothy just linked them in the chat in case you want a copy for yourself. And both the slides and a recording will be posted on our Facebook later. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can get started. There we go. All right. So if you haven't heard of us before, we're Design Collective. We are a community at McGill that hosts workshops and events that are related to learning all sorts of design. So graphic design, UX, web design, and everything. And if you'd like to stay up to date on what kinds of workshops we have coming up, then our socials and our website and our email are all linked in the slides below. So yeah. Just a little bit about me. I am the founder of Design Collective. I'm interested mostly in product and UX design, but I've also been learning Blender on and off for about 2 years because I really like 3D illustration. And I'm definitely not an expert yet, but I would love to share what I do know and give you all the toolkit you need to get started. Cool, so on the agenda for today, we're going to be going over an overview of 3D modeling. What is Blender? We're going to look at the user interface and some basic commands. Then we're going to be making our own project. And then at the end, I'll have some resources in the slides. And as always, interrupt me anytime to ask questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. And again, the slides and recording will be made available after the workshop. All right, so I'm sure you're all familiar with 2D design. And 3D is, I would say it's a more mechanical and technical process because what you're doing is making a mathematical representation of an object so that the computer software that you're using can calculate things like where the light rays hit and how the object moves in the case of animation. For 3D illustration, there's usually a process that's generally followed. And I've taken one of my projects, a hot dog, to demonstrate. So first of all, there's modeling where we create the basic shape from shapes or like a sculpting tool. And then to add materials and colors and transparency and reflectiveness and all that stuff, we add materials, which is called shading. And then for the third step, I didn't use it in my hot dog, but it's called texturing. And it's where you add surface detail, like the texture of a rock or wood to an object. And then the last step is called rendering. It's the last step in our 3D pipeline. And it's where we can set the camera angle and the file size and stuff like that. And then finally render our final image. Okay, so what is Blender? You might have heard of things like Maya or Cinema 4D, which are 3D softwares used for industrial level kind of production. But Blender is a free version of those softwares that does more or less the same thing. And I really like it because there are so many tutorials and like troubleshooting tips that are available on YouTube and Google that are really easily accessible. Oops. All right, so now we can go ahead and open up Blender on your devices, and I'll be leaving the slides from now. But if you miss anything, I have all the instructions and screenshots in the slides, so check that if you run into any problems. And for now, I guess you might have to minimize the zoom window in order to work in Blender, or split your screen or navigate between windows, just so that you can hear me and work in Blender at the same time. All right, so I'm going to open up Blender. And while everyone opens that up and takes a look at the interface, I'll just say that the interface can look very intimidating because it's so dense, and there are a lot of words that you might not know, like compositing or ambient occlusion or stuff like that. But for your first few projects, you'll only be using a few basic functions, so don't worry about that. Just to address if you're feeling overwhelmed or if you've never done this before, that there is a steep learning curve to Blender. And you can always refer back to the slides if you need to. All right, is everyone on Blender? Great, awesome. So this is what you'll see when you open up Blender all the time. This space is called the 3D viewport. It's where you'll move things around and make stuff bigger and stuff like that. Every time you open up Blender, there'll be a default cube, which is selected right now. And they just give you a cube to get started with. It's nothing special. And you'll also notice that there's a camera and a light, which we'll be working with later. So to first navigate around this 3D viewport, this is where if you have a mouse, it'll come in handy. So if you have a mouse, the middle mouse button, you might either have to press down the scroll button, or for my mouse, there is a special middle mouse button that's square shaped underneath the scroll wheel. So to rotate around your screen, you just want to press down that middle mouse button and then click and drag, and that'll make you rotate around the screen. And if you don't have a mouse, there's a tool in the top right corner. It's this circle with a bunch of axes, and it's called the gizmo. And if you click and drag within this circle, you'll be able to do the same thing, just like you had a mouse. Is that working for everybody? Do you have any questions? Great, okay, perfect. So to move closer or further away from an object, you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out. If you don't have a mouse, there's a set of 4 icons next to the gizmo, underneath the gizmo. And the first icon is like this magnifying glass. And if you click and drag within that icon, you'll be able to do the same thing, like that. And lastly, to pan around the screen, for mouse users, you hold Shift and the middle mouse key. And if you click and drag, you'll be able to move around the screen. And if you don't have a mouse, the set of icons below the gizmo, there's a hand icon. And if you click and drag within that hand icon, you can do the same thing. If anyone has an issue, you can type in the chat. Otherwise, we can move on. All right. So now for a few basic functions that we can do to an object. First of all, if we want to move this object, then we can go to the sidebar on the left, making sure your cube is selected, and you can tell if it's outlined in orange. So going over to the left sidebar, there's going to be a button that's labeled Move. And if you press on that, then some arrows come up. And if you click and drag on these arrows, you can move the object along that direction, like that. So there are 3 axes in Blender because we're in 3D space. So the red line corresponds to the x-axis, the green line corresponds to the y-axis, and then the blue line is the z-axis, so up and down. In reality, I'll almost never use the sidebar over here because there's a much quicker way to access all your functions, and they are what are called hotkeys or keyboard shortcuts. So to move the object like we just did, the hotkey is G, and I remember it as grab. So if I press G on my keyboard, the cube is going to be stuck to your cursor. So there's no need to click and drag. And then to place the cube, you just click again. And pressing G is going to make your cube move in all 3 dimensions, which can be hard to control. So what we can do is press G and then X if you want to snap it to the x-axis. And then again, you just click wherever you want to move it. And same thing with the y-axis. So press G, then Y, or G and Z. And then you can move it up and down. And what if you're in the middle of moving it, but then you change your mind? Then you can simply right click to cancel that movement. Feel free to play around with that for a couple of seconds. And if you're having trouble with anything, you can type in the chat or unmute yourself. Moving on, we can rotate this object. So to do that, you can either go over to the sidebar and press rotate, or use the keyboard shortcut R. So if you just type R on your keyboard, you'll be able to freely rotate this cube. But just like we did before, you can rotate in only one axis. So if you press R and then X, you can rotate around the x-axis, or R then Y for the y-axis, and same thing for the z-axis. And then our last command will be if we want to change the shape. So we use what is called the scale function. So if you press S on your keyboard, you'll be able to scale that shape to be as big or as little as you want. And you can also scale in only one axis. So if you press S then X, then it'll elongate on the x-axis, and same thing for Y, and same thing for Z to make it taller or thinner, like that. All right. Is anyone having problems or has a question? Cool, amazing. We can start building our scene now since we've learned those 3 functions. Since we only have an hour, we're going to be modeling just a simple scene with a tree. And I've come up with 2 trees as options you can pick from. And then I'll open up the polling, which I think I set up. And I'll show you the options right now. So I'll go over to my slides. And so this is option number 1. It's a pine tree. We'll be making the basic shape of the tree, and we'll get to the ornaments if we have time. And the second option is an apple tree. And same thing, we'll make the whole thing and the tree, and we'll get to the apples if we have time. They're both so cute. Oh, thanks, Vivian. So I'll show you the first option again. It's this one or this one. And I'll open up the polling right now. And I'll give you about 20 seconds. Also, I have both the instructions for both trees in the slides, so you'll be able to make either tree after the workshop. Okay, looks like the majority is picking apple tree, which is fantastic. I'll end the polling now. And then, okay, so just to go through the process, we'll be making the background surface, and then the grass layer, and then the tree body, and then the tree trunk. And if we have time, we'll get to the apples. Okay, I'm gonna go back into Blender, and if you wanna do the same. So this default cube that we played around with, I'm gonna delete that. To delete it, I'm gonna press X on my keyboard and then confirm delete. We don't want that. And then first we'll start out by making the plane that covers the bottom. A plane in Blender is just a flat surface. So to do that, I'm gonna press Shift and A. And then this brings up an add menu. And I'm gonna hover over mesh and then go to plane, which is the first one. So that adds a plane to my scene. Also let me know if I need to slow down or speed up. Yeah, so that adds a plane to my scene, but I want this plane to be bigger. And to make it bigger, I'm gonna use my scale command. So I'm gonna press S, and you can either drag it out to be however big you want, but I want it to be a specific size. So I'm just gonna type the number 20 and then press enter. And that'll give me a plane that is 20 meters by 20 meters, like that. Does anyone need me to repeat that?
Wait, can you say how to do a plane again?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just start over. To add a plane, I'm gonna do Shift and A. And that'll bring up an add menu. And then go to mesh and then click plane. And that'll add this plane, but I wanna make it bigger, so I'm gonna scale it up. So I press S, then 20, and then enter, like that. Is that good for everyone? Cool. Next, we will make the grass layer, and I want to start with a cube. So I'm going to go Shift and A again, which brings up this add menu again, and I'm going to go to cube, which is the one under plane. And then this places a cube in my scene. And what I want it to be is the thin surface that the tree sits on. So I want to scale it in the Z axis. So how I do that is press S and then Z. And then move your mouse so that the cube becomes thinner. And just eyeball this to whatever looks good to you. And you can always like navigate around and look at it from any side. And you can also press S and Z again if you want to adjust that. How did you get the cube? I'll do that again. So I press Shift and A every time I want to add a shape. Shift A. And then go over to mesh and then cube is the second one. And then, so I have this cube. And then I'm going to scale it down in the x-axis. So pressing S and Z and just moving my mouse so that it gets thinner. Like that. Yes, is there a way to undo things? Yes, you can just press Control Z. Or you can delete the shape and start again. That's what I usually do. All right. So we can start making the tree body, or the leafy part of the tree. Is the cube laying on the square? So there shouldn't be a gap between your cube and your plane. It should be like sandwiched between it. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yes.
Let's say you wanted to do this all about the origin, like at like 0, 0.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to center your object?
Your cursor should be defaulted at 0, 0.
I moved it around and it's like,
Oh, I see. I believe you can reset your cursor, or like it doesn't matter very much, just so that like, just make sure that your cube is on top of your plane.
Okay.
It's like just a surface for your plane. And if you need to move things around, you just press G and then move it around wherever you need. Okay, so moving on to the tree itself, I am going to add another shape. So I'm going to press Shift A for the add menu. And then this time I'm going to go to icosphere. It's the 5th one from the top. So that's going to add this shape to my scene. And I want it a little smaller, so I'm going to scale it down. And to scale it down, I just press S and then move my mouse towards the center of the shape. And just eyeball it to whatever looks good to you, like that. Is that good with everyone? All right, I'll keep going. So you have this icosphere selected, and I don't want it to be in the middle of the plane. I want it to be above, like the tree is. So I'm going to grab it and move it in the Z axis. So I'm going to press G and then Z, and then just move it up to wherever it looks right. It looks a little big to me, so I'm going to scale it down a little. All right. And if you notice in my original example, the tree isn't exactly spherical. It's a little elongated. So to do that, I'm going to scale my icosphere in the Z axis. So I'm pressing S and then Z, and that makes it more ovally. And you can always adjust it by pressing G and then X to move it around. Are there any questions? Are we all good with that step? All right. Judging from Mitch, yes. So to make the tree trunk, I'm going to add another shape, and this time it's going to be a cylinder. So I'm going to press Shift and A to bring up the add menu. Hold on. How do you resize the square along only certain axes? This one? So you just press S and then any axes that you want. So S and then X, S and then Z, or S and then Y, or just S. Cool. Okay, so to make the tree trunk, I'm going to press Shift A, open up the add menu, go into mesh, and this time we want a cylinder. So adding a cylinder to my scene, and this cylinder is huge, so I want it to be smaller, and I'm going to scale it down to the size of the tree trunk that I want. So I'm going to press S, move my mouse towards the center of the object, and then maybe I want the trunk about that thick. So I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to scale the cylinder up so that it's taller. So to do that, I'm going to press S and then Z. And if you drag your mouse out, the trunk should get longer. And let's say I think that's too thick. So I'm going to scale it down again. So just pressing S and then scaling it down like that. Is everyone good with that? Okay. So I think we're gonna have time for apples. So to add an apple, I am going to add a new shape. So Shift and A to bring out the add menu again. And this time we're gonna add another icosphere. But this time, if you notice on your bottom left, there's gonna be this tab that says, sorry, hold on. How did you change the trunk radius? Let me delete this. Trunk radius, so I either scale it up or down. So I can press S and make it bigger, if you want it to be thicker, or drag your mouse inwards if you want it to be thinner. How do you rotate your view? If you have a mouse, it's the middle mouse button. And just hold the middle mouse button down and drag across your screen to rotate. Or if you don't have a mouse, rotating is in this gizmo, the gizmo tool. How do you make the trunk taller? So you select the trunk and you scale in the Z axis. So S and then Z, like that. It doesn't matter that your trunk is going through the other side. No, sorry, I forgot to mention. Your trunk can go through the bottom and it can go through your tree, but it doesn't matter because you won't see it. Are there any more questions? Or if anyone wants me to repeat a step, I'm happy to do that. How do you descale equally and in X and Y? So you can do this. You can scale down in every axis except Z. So you can hit S for scale and then Shift Z if you want to scale up or down in only the X and Y axes. How you made a tree? Sure. So I'll start over. So to make the elliptical tree, I Shift A and then add an icosphere. Then I scale it down with S. And then I grab it, G, and move it in the Z axis, Z. And then I move it up to wherever I want it. And then I'm going to scale it again in the Z axis so that it gets longer. So S, Z, and then just drag it to whatever looks right. Like that. I hope I answered everyone's questions. How do you? Oh, Jed, I answered your question, right? You basically just press S and then Shift Z. Okay, perfect. So onto the apples. I'm going to add another icosphere by going to Shift A for this add menu, and then back to icosphere. So I have another icosphere added, but this time there should be a tab in your bottom left that says add icosphere. If you just click on this, it'll bring up this menu of things you can change about the icosphere. So for the subdivisions, I want to decrease, I do want to decrease 2 to 1. So you can type in 1 or drag the number. And then what this will do is decrease the number of faces on your icosphere. Does that make sense? I can do that again.
Yeah, could you please do it again? Where do you
Yeah,
where
for
do you found first?
Where do I,
Yeah,
what? Sorry?
on the menu. Yeah. Like where did you click on the left side of the screen?
Okay.
Did you yeah.
So I go Shift A and I add an icosphere, right? So the menu, then it's called add icosphere. It's either like this or like this. Do you see that?
No, I don't have that. Is it on the clock? No. Like the clock in the corner?
No, it's on your left side.
Well, I don't have that like add to sphere menu.
Okay, hold on.
I only have like the clock, playback, keying.
Oh. You could honestly just make an apple without changing the subdivisions. The only reason I did it because just to change up the shape a little. Edwin says try pressing F6 after you add it. Maybe that brings it up.
Well, I'm using a Mac, so I don't think it doesn't do anything.
Oh, I can look into it later and then let you know.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is anyone else having that problem? Or do we see the menu? Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not an expert. It will disappear if you click anywhere else right after you make the shape though. So like add the shape and then don't do anything and see if it's there. So I'm going to Shift A, press icosphere. And if you don't press anything, it should be there. And then you can't like touch anything. If you move anything, it'll disappear. Sorry. Okay, perfect. So all I want to do is decrease the subdivisions to 1 so that there's less faces. And after we've done that, I'm gonna click out and then select the icosphere and then scale it down so that it's like apple sized. So S and then move my mouse towards the center of the shape. Cool. And then now I'm gonna grab it with G and then just move it wherever, like on the tree. And so the thing about moving is that you're moving in 3D space, so it's hard to move your object exactly where you want it. So what I want to do is first, I want to check where the camera is. My camera is right here. And so that means it'll only see this side of the tree. So I'm only going to add my apples on this side of the tree. And then what I want to do after that is, do you see the gizmo? I want to go to and just click like one of the axes. So I'm going to click the red X axis, and then this shows me this head-on view of my scene. And then from here, I can just change the position of my apples, like just press G and then move the object. And then I'm going to switch back to the gizmo and then press the Y axis. And then it shows me that the apple's not actually on the tree. So I'm going to grab it again with G, and then I'm going to move it onto the tree. Does that make sense? And then same thing for the Z axis. I can press the Z axis on the gizmo, and then I'll be able to see it from the top down. And then I can move my apple so that it's right on the tree. Like that. Is anyone having any issues? Okay, so to make multiple apples, we're just gonna duplicate the apple that we just made. And to duplicate a shape, we press Shift and D. D for duplicate. And when you do Shift D, you should have this new shape attached to your cursor, and you can place it down wherever. So I'll do it right there. And then I'm gonna repeat the same process. So I'm gonna press the X axis on my gizmo and check to make sure it's in a place that I like. And I'm gonna move it if it's not. And then I'll check the Y axis. And then I'll check the Z axis. And that's perfect for me. And so for more apples, we just repeat this process. So Shift D to duplicate, and then place it wherever. And then recheck your axes to make sure it's in the right place. And then G to grab and move it. And you can also rotate around your screen using your middle mouse button and adjust your shapes like that. Does that make sense for everyone? Cool, so repeat for however many apples you want. Maybe I'll do another apple. So Shift D to duplicate and then move it and then just keep on moving around and adjusting. Shift D to duplicate and then move it around. Okay, and if you want some apples on the ground, like they've fallen, you can duplicate one of your apples. So Shift D again, and I'm just gonna move it in the X-axis. So press Z after you duplicate, and then drag it down until it hits the grass. And I'm gonna do that a couple more times. Does anyone need me to repeat a step or anything? You can also duplicate it and just put them wherever. All right, if no one has any problems or questions, I think I'm gonna move on so that we can finish the, how to duplicate the apples again. Yes, to duplicate the apples, I'm just gonna press Shift and D. And then make sure that they're placed right. Also, if you don't want all your apples to have the same shape, you can select an apple and press R to rotate it, just so that there's some variation. Or you could scale one up by using S, or scale some down. Just gonna rotate them so they don't look all the same.
So I have the same question, a similar question I had before. This time I've moved too far away and it's like challenging to get back to the origin. Is there like a quick command or do I just need to navigate it?
I believe there is. I just don't remember what it is.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Yeah, there is a way to do it. Where you set again.
Oh yeah, got you.
Yeah, to undo. Oh, sorry, to command. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, Mitch, stop moving around. Cool. So let's move on to lighting and rendering, just so we can finish up. But you can always come back and add more apples or play around with your shape here if you want. So right now we're in what's called solid mode, which is where you see all your shapes as a solid. And to see lighting and colors and stuff, we have to change views to something called a render preview mode. So if you just tap Z on your keyboard, it should bring up this menu here. So tap Z and hold it. And what we want is the top one, the one that says rendered. So I'm gonna go there. If that doesn't work for you, there's also a set of 4 icons above the gizmo, and we want the last one. Did that work for everyone? Okay, cool. So we should be in this mode now where we see the light and it looks a little bit different. All right, now to add colors or to add materials. So starting with the plane, the big background that we have, I just want to select it by clicking on it, and it should have this orange outline around it. And then I'm going to go over to the properties panel on the bottom right. So it's this big vertical panel. And then I'm going to go to the tab and select material properties. It's the icon that looks like a ball and it's second from the bottom. So when I'm in material properties, there's this button that says new. I'm going to press this button and this assigns a new material to my plane. We can actually go ahead and name it background or whatever you want to name it, just by changing the name. Odd visual artifacts in my render mode. Like what?
Like specifically, I have a bunch of weird, like random misbehaving pixels around like the shadow of the tree that are randomly like white.
It might be because it renders slowly, or I don't know the technical side of it, but because we're in like Eevee engine, rendering engine or something, it's slower in your viewport. And then the pixels don't render as fast. So you might have to just wait and then it'll render properly. I'm not sure. Can you just check that your, if you go to the third icon from the bottom, like if you see where I am, the render properties tab, are you in Eevee?
Yeah, I am. I think you're probably right, and it'll just be fine with time. But yeah, I do have like Eevee selected there.
Okay, it might just be your laptop. I'm not sure. All right, so if we go back to material, and we have this material applied to our plane, and then to change the color, we click on the color that's beside base color, and that'll bring up this color wheel. So you can choose your own color within the color wheel, or if you want the light blue that I have in my scene, the color is DBEBEF, which I will send in the chat right now if you want my colors. So, oops. How did you get the color menu? So, do you have this material thing applied? If you do, it should be the base color. And if you just click the base color, and then the color wheel will show up. And then my color is, sorry, if you go to hex, the hex tab, you'll be able to enter DBEBEF. So that'll give you this color on the plane. And then same thing for all the other objects on your scene. So for the grass layer, I just select this, this layer, and then go to new material, and this will add a new material, and I'll just rename it grass. And then again, going to base color, clicking the color beside it, and then changing the hex code, or you can play around and select your own color. But mine is 81AA78. Oh no, sorry. The light green is 9DBD81. So I'll just copy that into my hex code. And then that green color will be applied to the grass. And then I'm just going to continue with all my other materials. So for my tree, I'm going to select the circle thing and click new material, rename the material tree, and then copy my color, which is 81AA78, into the hex. How did you get to the viewpoint that shows shadows? You either hold down Z on your keyboard, and there's going to be this menu that shows up, and you want the top one that says rendered. If that doesn't work for you, there are icons at the top, and you want the last one. The third one would also work, but the fourth one shows shadows and stuff. Cool. And then for my apples, by the way, you can always adjust your object placing even when you're adding colors and stuff. So for my apples, sorry, I'll do my trunk first. My trunk, add a new material, name it trunk, and change the base color to this hex code. And that'll color my trunk. For the apples, I'm just gonna do one of the apples, add a new material, name it apple, copy my red color, paste it into base color hex, and that'll make this apple red. And if you don't want to change the color separately for all of your apples, there's a quick way to do it, and it's selecting all of them. So holding down Shift and selecting all of the apples by clicking on it, and then select the one that you have colored last. And then after that, I'm going to press Control L on my keyboard, and this links the objects. And then I'm going to go down to materials, and then the material will be applied to all of the apples. And I can repeat that if anyone wants me to.
Can you do that again where you link the colors?
Yeah, for sure. So you want to select all your apples. So starting with the non-colored ones first, the ones that you want to link. So holding down Shift and selecting all of them. And if you mistakenly select something else, you can undo the selection. And then I'm going to select my colored one last. So this assumes that you already applied a material to one of them. And then I'm going to press Control L. And that brings up this menu. And then I'm going to go to materials. So this links all their materials. So that means when you change this color, it'll be changed for all of the apples. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Does anyone else have any questions? So you can always go back to this, but I'll keep moving on. Next, show how to fine tune the position of the apples so they don't look like they're floating. Yeah, so basically, if there's one that's floating, then just select it. Basically, just move around by rotating around your screen and then grabbing it and then moving it. And looking at the axes by pressing the axis in the gizmo just shows you that view from head on so that it's easier to manipulate the object. So hopefully that works for you. Okay, so moving on to lighting. We're gonna add some overhead lighting first. To add a light, we bring up the add menu again by Shift A. So press Shift A, and this time we're gonna go down to light. It's about halfway down, and then hover over light, and then choose area light. And when you press that, it's already selected, so don't click anything else. And all I wanna do is move this light up. So how I'm gonna do that is pressing G for grab and then Z to move up in the Z axis. So you should see this light. And I'm just gonna move it up, maybe about 1 tree length above the tree. Maybe like that. Did everyone do that? And then if you go over to the properties panel that we looked at on the bottom right, you'll see that the light has some properties that we can change. And I want to change the properties of this area light. So first of all, I want to change the power to 50 watts. That'll make it brighter. And then next, I want to change the color of the lamp, of the light, to some kind of yellow. And it doesn't really matter what kind of yellow. I'm just gonna randomly pick yellow on the color wheel. Maybe like a light yellow so that the light is warmer. Did anyone have trouble with that part? If there are no, oh, sure. So I'll redo that part. To get a light, you just press Shift and A to bring up your add menu, and the light will be about halfway down. So go to light, and then we want the area light, which is the fourth light. And then do that, and then don't click anything else because the light is already selected. And then I want to move it up. So I press G and then Z to move it up the Z axis. And then I'm going to move it to about 1 tree length above the tree. So just eyeball that. And then I want to change the properties of the light. So I go over to the right hand properties panel, and I'm going to change the power to 50, and then the color to any yellow of your choosing. Cool. Does anyone have any more questions?
I have a question. So I don't know what I clicked, but then it like I have no more color now. But then when I try to color everything back in, it just doesn't show up. Like I don't know what I did.
Something will happen.
Sorry?
Oh, are you talking about the light or your objects?
I was trying to do the light, but then I don't know what I clicked, and then all of a sudden just the colors went away. Like now it's gray.
Oh, try pressing Z again, like hold down Z.
Just Z?
Yeah. And then
It
try
shows me
going.
the, sorry?
I think you might be in like wireframe mode or solid mode.
Yeah, like that.
Okay, so do you see the icon that I'm hovering above right now?
Okay, yeah.
We want the last one, so the fourth one.
Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. So after we've added the overhead lighting, I want to add some side lighting. So to add another light, I'm going to hit Shift A again for the add menu. And again, we're going to go to the light. And this time we want a point light. So the first option. And this is going to add a point light to your scene. For this one, it doesn't really matter where you put it. So I'm just going to grab it with G and then move it around to wherever it looks good. So I placed it to the left of the tree. So just eyeball it wherever it looks good. And I also want to change the properties for this light. So if you go over to the properties panel, I'm going to change the power to 30 watts and then the color also to another yellow. So just click somewhere in the yellow. And then I want to add another one of these lights. So to do that, I'm just going to duplicate the light I already have. So to duplicate the light, I just press Shift D like we did with all the other apples and stuff. And I'm just going to move it over to the right, just so the right side of the tree is lit up. And then you can also navigate around your screen and adjust the placement of the lights as well. So just rotate around your screen, press G for grab, and then move it around. And then I'm going to duplicate this light one more time. So Shift D, and then just move it to like in front of the tree. Something like that. Does anyone need me to do that again? Okay, so I think I'll move on. If no one has any more questions, we're almost done. We're almost ready to render. The last thing I want to check is the camera view. So if you want to view where your camera is, like you can see there's a camera over here, but if you want to see what that camera sees, Go back to the 4 icons under the gizmo, and there will be a camera icon. And if you just click on that camera icon, you'll be able to see this scene. Now, let's say you wanted to change it. Is there a way to get isometric view? Yes, I have done that before, and you have to install a plugin, I think. So if everyone is in the camera view, that's what your camera sees. And then to change it, there's this little arrow beside the gizmo on the right side of the gizmo. If you press that arrow, there should be a menu that comes up that says transform. And then what we want is the third tab down that says view. And so if everyone is there in the view tab, oops, we want to check the checkbox that says lock camera to view. And then what this does is allow you to adjust your camera view just like you navigate in the viewport. So let's say my scene is a little high up for me, so I'm just gonna hold shift and my middle mouse button and pan down a little so that my tree is in the middle. And I also want it a little bigger, so I'm gonna zoom in like that. And when you're done adjusting this camera view, make sure to uncheck this checkbox. How did you get here? So let's say I'm not in the camera view. So there are 4 icons below the gizmo, and you can see the third one down is a camera icon. And you can just click on it and it shows you the view. And if you want to change it, go to the menu that says view and then check lock camera to view. I also have screenshots in the slides if that's less confusing. And then I'm going to uncheck this when I'm done because I don't want the camera to be attached to my navigation. Does anyone have any more questions?
I have a question. If I click on camera view, but nothing shows up.
Like nothing happens?
Yeah, it doesn't come up with a drop menu.
Oh, the menu that lets you lock your camera to your view?
Yeah.
So that menu is hidden in a little arrow that's next to the gizmo. It should be on the right side of the gizmo. It's like this tiny arrow.
Oh, okay. Yep. I see it. My bad.
Okay, good. Yeah. And if no one has any more questions, we are ready to render. Once you're happy with your camera angle and all your lighting. Sorry, my dog is barking. Okay, so we're ready to render because I'm happy with my camera angle. So to render, we just go to the render tab on your top navigation menu, and I'm just going to click render image. When you click render image, there should be a new window that pops up. And it might take a while depending on your device, but your image will be rendered. And it's not saved to your device yet. So to save it, I want to go to image and then save. And then this will allow you to name your file and then save it to the folder. Did that work? Yeah, and then just a note that you can always go back here, change the lighting, add an apple, or alter anything, and then render again. So nothing is permanent. All right, just in the sake of time, I am going to go back to the slides and just finish up. I just wanted to show you guys some of the renders I've done just to show you. You've seen these before. The dragon one is my background and the hot dog. Cool. And then finally, I have linked some resources in the slides. So these tutorials are so helpful because they help you make a project that both looks good and you learn stuff that you didn't know. So this is like the sole way that I learned Blender, through these tutorials. Since we only had an hour, we didn't get into more complicated stuff, but the resources will help you and introduce you to stuff that like way more exciting stuff that Blender can do. And for design inspiration and tips, there's always Dribble, the Blender subreddit, and Blender has some official documentation. So if you ever run into any issues, you can just search it up on there. Yeah, I hope you guys all learned something today. Thank you so much for coming, and I would love it if you all joined the Facebook community and posted your renders there so that we can all see. And finally, if you have any feedback or you want to let us know how you enjoyed this workshop, we have linked a feedback form in the slides. Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. That was great.
Thank you.
I can stick around if anyone has any specific questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, for sure.
So since you're in physiology, have you been able to use this in research or stuff? Or
I don't do biology research, so no.
do you know if there's like plugins for stuff like, say, like with protein modeling or stuff like that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I've never worked with that. You could definitely check. But they might use a different software.
Oh, okay, because that would be pretty dope.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Hello, Carrie. I have one question.
Yeah, for sure.
So say we created this aperture today with all the texturing and coloring stuff. If once I save it and I get import to say Unity, do you know if the lighting and the color will also apply there?
I think it will. I haven't tried, but I feel like it would.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Have you worked in Unity before?
Yeah, I think I tried to import it once before, and I think the lighting may still be there, but I'm not quite sure.
Actually, I have tried that before, or like someone else imported my model into Unity, and I'm pretty sure it did, but I'm not sure. Or you might have to reapply the materials.
So say if we just want to clear up all the lightings, I wouldn't create the lightings that we just did today, right? That will clear up everything.
Yeah, maybe in Unity you would just have to do it in Unity.
Okay, got it.
Because apparently you can't import cameras or lights into Unity.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming. How do you change the rendering properties such as image resolution? I'm still screen sharing, right? So I'll go back into Blender, and I believe all of that is in the render properties. So it's the third icon down in your properties panel. Sorry, not the third one, the fourth one. The one that says output properties. So this is where you can change the resolution. Right now it's default 1920 by 1080, but you can change that. You can also change the resolution by, this is the percent resolution. So you can change it to like 200 if you want it to be higher. And the aspect ratio is like, I'm pretty sure it's the camera zoom or something. And Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah, there's a lot to play around with and a lot to discover in Blender. Will there be more tutorials on Blender like this in the future? I hope so. There might be, but we're only doing one workshop a month this year. So I'm not sure. Is there anything you want to see specifically? Oh, that's nice of you. Yeah. You know what? I'll try to, but no promises. um, a hot dog tutorial. I forget how I made that. All right, if no one has any questions, thank you all for coming and sticking around. And if you have any questions, you can always email me or message me. So I guess I'll end the call. Bye, everyone.